your questions in the chat. And along the way, I'm also going to share 5 fun facts about bison. There will not be a quiz at the end, but you might get some good conversation starters for your next dinner party. So Madison, if you could open up the slides, share the slide screen now. Okay, there we go. Yes, so I'm calling this talk Better with Bison, and you'll see why as we go. Okay, next slide, please. My first fun fact, as many of you I'm sure know, bison are North America's largest land animal. But what does that exactly mean? So there's a bull and a cow here, the cow standing closer to us than the bull. Full-grown bulls can weigh up to 2,000 pounds. Cows are about half as heavy as bulls. The bulls measure about 10 to 12 feet from nose to tail. And picture that, imagine lining 3 of them up, nose to tail. They would be about the same length as a school bus. And if you were sitting in that bus, you could just reach out the window and pat their shoulders. That's how tall they are. Okay, next slide, please. So my inspiration for this book goes back to 2005 when I was mostly writing for magazines. And I got a pair of assignments that took me to Montana and Saskatchewan to write about bison being reintroduced to Grasslands National Park in Saskatchewan, also the Nature Conservancy's Old Man on His Back conservation area in Saskatchewan, and to American Prairie in Montana. This photo is one I took of the release of the first members of the American Prairie herd on a rather cool November day. It was a very moving event because this was the first time that bison had set foot on this land in 120 years. And the herd has grown considerably since those first 16 bison were released. After that, whenever I heard about bison, my ears perked up. And when I started writing books about wildlife for children, I knew bison would be a great animal to feature in one of them for 2 reasons. They are the stars of one of North America's greatest conservation success stories, and they're an incredibly important keystone species. And I'll talk more about the keystone species part later. I'll start with talking about the conservation success story. Next slide. So when I talk about bison in North America, I'm talking about 2 subspecies that belong to the same species, which happens to have the scientific name of bison bison. The 2 subspecies are wood bison and plains bison. And when I say subspecies, that means they're close cousins that can interbreed. This diagram is from my book. It's got a lot of detail in it, but the key things to know about the differences between them is that wood bison are heavier and taller than plains bison. It suits them for living in the colder, snowier environment in the north. But it can be hard to tell them apart if you're not a bison expert. So some of the features to look for are shown here. The shape of the shoulder hump, the shape of the beard. So the plains bison has a more rounded shoulder hump. The wood bison has a more angular shoulder hump. The plains bison has a long, dense, sort of bell-shaped beard, and the wood bison has a thinner, more pointed beard. And then the forehead hair. The plains bison has much thicker, bushier forehead hair. Next slide, please. So when Europeans arrived in North America, bison lived in most of what is now the United States, Western Canada, and part of northern Mexico. As you can see on this map, and the little red bison in the center there marks where Madison is at the North American Bison Discovery Center today in North Dakota. So at that point, when Europeans first arrived, there were about 170,000 wood bison and at least 30 million plains bison. And most of those plains bison lived on the Great Plains, which is the green area on this map. Some of the summer herds were so huge that a person could ride across the plains for days and see nothing but bison in every direction. And even when the bison were out of sight, you could hear them, and people said the sound of these thousands of hooves striking the ground as they plodded along sounded like the rumbling of distant thunder. So next slide, please. Here's a fun fact number 2. If you could have taken those 30 million bison and lined them up nose to tail, they would have circled the equator 1.3 times. Okay, next slide, please. So the picture on the left is of a stone tool that was found by archaeologists in southeastern Oregon. And analysis showed that it has remnants of dried bison blood on it, and that it's probably about 18,000 years old. And it was most likely used for butchering bison or scraping the flesh off hides. The picture on the right is a painting by the American artist George Catlin. And he traveled across the Great Plains in 1832, and he captured the scene of Indigenous hunters sneaking up on a herd of bison under the disguise of wolf skins, which was one of the techniques that Indigenous people used to hunt bison at the time when Europeans first arrived, and for many years after that, before things changed, which I'll get into. So Indigenous people have bonds with bison that go back tens of thousands of years, and they were particularly important to people who lived on the Great Plains because bison were so numerous there. Many of those people relied on bison for their survival and had a deep spiritual relationship with them. Each of these different peoples had and still has its own distinct bison teachings, stories, songs, dances, ceremonies, and prayers. Next slide. But the one thing they have in common is that their ancestors long ago figured out how to make use of every part of the bison, and they tried not to waste anything. So this is an illustration of some things from my book, where it shows some of the more than 140 traditional Indigenous uses for different parts of the bison, right down to the tail and the bladder and every other part. And also there's some different Indigenous names for bison. So not wasting anything showed respect for the bison, but it was also practical because it was hard to hunt and kill these huge animals that had big horns. So when hunters were successful, they wanted to make the most of their efforts. Next slide, please. When Europeans arrived in North America, they brought horses and guns, and that made it a lot easier to kill bison. They also related to bison in a very different way than Indigenous people did. I don't have time to get into the details of the massacre that nearly wiped bison off the map, but it was mainly driven by two things. A desire to make as much money as possible from bison and a determination to starve the Indigenous people who depended on bison for their survival into submission so settlers could take over their land. So as I said, guns and horses played a big part in the slaughter. And then when railroads were built across the Great Plains in 1870s, it got even easier to kill bison and to ship their hides and bones and meat to factories in the eastern US mainly. Next slide, please. So this graph, which is on display in the Discovery Center, shows how bison population basically plunged off the edge of a cliff, much like a bison jump. They went from 30 million to, by the late 1800s, almost zero. In 1865, there were no bison left east of the Mississippi, but there were still 10 to 15 million in the West at that time in 1865. Just 25 years later, in 1890, there were fewer than 300 plains bison anywhere, and most of them were in captivity. There were no free-roaming plains bison in Canada. The only free-roaming ones left were in the US. And as I say, most of them, the others were in captivity. And by then, there were also only a few hundred wood bison left in the wild in northern Canada. That's all pretty grim. So let's have another fun fact. And this is one of my favorites. Next slide, please. Did you know that bison can pick their noses with their tongues? It might seem like a gross habit, but it actually serves an important purpose. So as bison amble along with their heads low to the ground, grazing, they're constantly snuffling up dust and microbes, which get stuck in their snot. And so they frequently clean their noses with their tongues. And every time they do that, it carries a load of those microbes back to the bison's mouth, and then it swallows, and the microbes go down to the stomach, and they play an essential role in breaking down plant material. So without all those microbes in their stomachs, bison could not digest their food. Okay, back to bison history. Next slide, please. Bison were in bad shape in the late 1800s, but as we all know, they did not disappear. And that's because a few people refused to give up on them, even when they seemed doomed. So these small number of bison lovers conducted rescue missions. They went out and they captured bison calves from wild herds as the hunts were going on, sometimes grabbing the calves by their tails. And sure, they were squealing and resisting, but they captured them and they moved them to the safety of their ranches. And they were all working independently in different places: Montana, Texas, Kansas, South Dakota, and Manitoba. And they didn't necessarily know what the others were doing, but collectively they saved enough plains bison that there was a chance to rebuild the species. Next slide, please. In addition to the rescue herds, there were also about national park in the US, and in fact, the first national park anywhere in the world. And protecting bison was a major part of its mandate, which is why the National Park Service emblem features the bison that is still on badges that National Park Service employees wear today. Next slide, please. Again, I don't have time to go into detail about how the rescue unfolded, but all the efforts to protect bison did pay off. And it's a really inspiring conservation success story with new chapters that are still being written today. In the Q&A, if someone wants me to go into more detail, I can do that. One part of the story that's overlooked is that Indigenous people were at the forefront of bison conservation right from the start. They were key players in establishing 3 of the 5 most important rescue herds. And more recently, they're taking a lead role through Indigenous initiatives such as the Intertribal Buffalo Council and the Buffalo Treaty. This photo was taken on the Wind River Reservation in Wyoming, which is home of the Eastern Shoshone and Northern Arapaho tribes. And they have been getting bison from the Intertribal Buffalo Council transfers. And they're among dozens of tribes and First Nations that are bringing bison back to their lands. Next slide, please. So there's now about 500,000 bison in North America, which is an amazing comeback, even though it's still just a tiny fraction of what there once were. But considering there were only a few hundred when they hit rock bottom, 500,000 is quite a success. However, a majority of those bison today live on farms and ranches and are part of commercial herds that are primarily raised for meat. As far as conservation herds go, which are herds in parks or on properties managed by conservation organizations or on Indigenous lands, there's currently about 6,000 wood bison and about 25,000 plains bison in these conservation herds. And of those, very few live the way their wild ancestors did. And that's especially true for plains bison. But there's some really exciting projects underway to establish large herds that can roam freely across huge, huge areas of land without running into fences and can go about their lives with minimal human management. The goal of these projects is basically just to let bison be bison. Okay, time for another fun fact. Next slide, please. Did you know that the Cree named a flower in honor of bison calving season? So prairie crocuses, if you live on the Great Plains, the northern Great Plains particularly, you know that prairie crocuses bloom in the spring right around the time when bison are born. And the Cree name for this flower that we know as the prairie crocus is Mustus otsi. Perhaps my pronunciation isn't right, but it means in English, buffalo's belly button. So they connected the name of the flower to the arrival of all these bison calves on the prairie. So it's hard to imagine what North America was like when 30 million bison lived here. And it's easier to understand what we would have lost if bison had gone extinct. We would have lost an animal that is revered by Indigenous peoples and gave life to their ancestors for tens of thousands of years. We would have lost an animal that is loved and admired by many people of all backgrounds, a real icon. And we would have lost a keystone species. Next slide, please. For anyone who's not familiar with that term, keystone species, a keystone is the top block in an arch made of stone blocks, and it holds the other blocks in place. So if you pull out the keystone block, the arch collapses. It gives the arch strength and stability. And so a keystone species plays a similar role in the natural world. It supports other species and it strengthens whole communities and ecosystems. So how do bison do this? Next slide, please. Bison earn their keystone species badge in many different ways. As you can see here, grazing, pooping, wallowing, walking, shedding, and dying. Almost everything they do helps other animals and plants and makes ecosystems healthier and stronger. So let's look at these one by one. Next slide, please. Bison are incredible grazers. They spend 9 to 11 hours every day just grazing, and they eat up to 15 to 30 pounds of grass every day. They never stay in one place for long because if they did, they would run out of food. So they meander across the landscape, mowing as they go. And studies have shown that this grazing style is very beneficial to grassland ecosystems. It creates more productive grasslands with a greater diversity of plants. It actually gives room for other non-grass plants to grow, and it boosts the productivity of the grasses to be cut down, and then they sprout up and produce more grass over the season than if they weren't grazed. So these more productive, diverse grasslands then increase the number and variety of insects, birds, mammals, and other animals that live in these places. In this photo, there's some pronghorns down in the bottom right corner that are enjoying the bison grazing lawn as much as the bison are. And then on the left side, there are some sharp-tailed grouse that are dancing. The males displaying for the females during the breeding season. And sharp-tailed grouse really like the short grass of a mowed bison lawn for displaying. Other animals that enjoy the grazing are prairie dogs because they can see better across to see if predators are coming, if they build their colonies where bison have been grazing. So there's a close association between those species. Okay, next slide, please. So the average bison produces about 10 to 12 quarts of dung, poop, whatever you want to call it, every day. And it's all useful. It makes fantastic fertilizer. And since bison are constantly on the move, it gets spread across the landscape. And it has multiple benefits. It feeds plants, which feed the plant eaters, which feed the animals that prey on the plant eaters. It provides egg-laying sites for a wide variety of insects, including dung beetles, like the ones here that are seen rolling a little ball of bison dung. And toads and snakes sometimes crawl under bison patties that have hardened on the top but are still a little soft underneath. And it's a good way for them to get out of the sun or the rain, or hide from predators. And in these little hidey holes, there's also usually some insects and worms and things for them to eat. So they're nice little refuges for toads and snakes. Okay, next slide, please. Wallowing. So wallowing is basically rolling around in the dirt like this bison is doing. And it's an activity that creates a shallow pit that's called a wallow. And wallows are started by bulls during the breeding season. When they're facing off to each other, they paw the ground a lot and sometimes throw themselves down on the ground and wallow. But once a wallow is created, any bison can use it, and they do. All bison love wallowing for a number of reasons. It helps them get rid of their woolly winter hair. It scratches itchy body parts that they can't reach with their hooves. It helps with itch prevention because the soil gets worked into their coats and smothers lice and other biting insects. And in summer, having a dusty coat keeps them cooler. Plus, a wallow is just a nice, cool place to lie. It's cooler than the grass. So wallows are also a valuable community resource. Other animals use them for dust bathing the way bison do. So this white-tailed jackrabbit here is relaxing after a dust bath in a bison wallow. But also in the spring, they collect snowmelt and rainwater and create pools of water that are used by a wide range of animals and provide moisture for a wide range of plants. And these temporary springtime pools are very important in dry environments. So wallowing is another way that bison are a keystone species. Next, please. Walking. So bison regularly walk 2 to 5 miles a day and sometimes farther than that as well. And just by walking, they're actually providing benefits to other species. In the spring, summer, fall, seeds get caught in their coats and hitch a ride to new growing sites. And with each footstep, the sharp outer edges of their hooves break up the ground, so it makes crevices that the seeds and water can slip into, so they're good growing sites. And meanwhile, the center of the hoof presses down the seeds into the ground, planting them much like a gardener would. So by walking, they're cultivating the prairie. And then in winter, bison are trailblazers for animals like pronghorn and deer that have trouble moving through deep snow. Bison typically travel in single file, and with their very large bodies, and the larger bison go at the front of the line, they can plow through very thick blankets of snow and tall drifts that would stop other animals in their tracks. Okay, next slide, please. Shedding. So in spring, bison start dropping bits of their winter coat all over the place. And if you've ever been out on the prairie in an area where there are bison in the spring, you'll find clumps of bison fur like the one shown on the left. So many kinds of birds like to weave bison hair into their nests. It's soft, it's warm, it's water repellent, and it also smells strongly of bison, so it hides the bird's scent from predators like coyotes that are using their noses to find birds. And then it also is used by others, like prairie dogs or ground squirrels, as in this picture, who gather large mouthfuls of bison hair and take it down into their underground dens to line them and keep their pups comfortable. Fun fact number 5, one bison bull sheds enough hair every year to meet the nest building needs of more than 1,500 birds. So you can imagine when there were 30 million bison on the plains, no birds were ever short of nesting material. Okay, next slide, please. Finally, bison play a keystone role even at the point when they pass on. That's when they give their final gifts to the community. Their main predators are wolves and grizzly bears. They mostly kill calves and 1-year-olds, but occasionally they can bring down an older bison. Coyotes also occasionally kill calves. But whether bison die being killed by predators or from accidents or illness or simply old age, eventually all the energy that is stored in their bodies goes back into the ecosystem. And remember, those are very big bodies, a couple thousand pounds. So one adult bison's body can become a banquet for all kinds of scavengers: wolves, bears, coyotes, foxes, cougars, lynx, bobcats, wolverines, badgers, skunks, ground squirrels, prairie dogs, ravens, magpies, vultures, eagles, beetles, and flies. All can feast on that body. And then once the bones are bare, porcupines, mice, and voles also gnaw on them to get the minerals they contain. And mice and voles also like to make their homes inside bison skulls like this one because they offer excellent protection from predators and harsh weather. So they're, again, when there were many, many bison skulls scattered across the prairies, those small mammals had places to live. Bottom line from all of these things is that we're very fortunate to have these keystone species in our world for many reasons. Next slide, please. So where can you go to see this special species? This map from my book shows some of the best places to see bison, but there really are so many places we couldn't fit all of them onto the map. If your favorite isn't on this map, please feel free to add it to the chat. Next slide. If you'd like to know more about my book or sign up for my newsletter, you can go to my website. The address is there. And next slide, please. Now we can open it up for questions. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to chatting in the Q&A.
Thank you so much, Frances. That was amazing. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing that presentation. Wow, I've read your book, but I still feel like I just learned so much. So thank you for that. That was incredible.
Well, I learned so much writing the book. It was really fun to learn about bison as I was writing.
Well, that was one of the questions I had. Were there any surprising discoveries you made while you were writing this book?
You know, I knew they were a keystone species, but I did not realize how many different ways they support other species, that they, well, all those things that I went through, I just didn't realize how influential they were. And it really struck me that what a change to the environment it was when they were removed from those ecosystems, especially in the places where they were so numerous. It was just a monumental change to take them out. And the fact that they're coming back now offers so much to protect grasslands, which are one of our most endangered ecosystems. So, you know, bison just have such an important role to play in that.
Amazing. We had one question in the chat from Marcus that says, what is your opinion on bison extinct species such as Bison antiquus, Bison priscus, Bison occidentalis, and Bison alaskensis? Please forgive me with those pronunciations. Some say they should be lumped together or considered a continuum of evolutionary change rather than sharply distinct. Do you have any opinions on that?
That is a great question, and I don't have the expertise actually to have an opinion on that. I know that scientists are often looking at species and trying to figure out the relationships between them and what are actually separate species. There's even debate over whether wood bison and plains bison are separate species or actually subspecies, and the stronger consensus seems to be that they are subspecies. But I would be interested to, I think it was Marcus who asked that question, if he had any thoughts on that, to the question he asked about the different species. So I'd be happy to hear from him.
Sure. So I kind of go across the state of Minnesota to the different county museums and like catalog how many bison. I've been to 30 museums and I've found over almost 42 skulls or skull caps in those museums. I mean, they're just everywhere in Minnesota. And there's all kinds of ideas about how horn shape or skull size or, determines species, but it just seems to vary so much. I don't know. I'm kind of on the side that some of them should be lumped together, but like wood bison and bison do look a lot different. So yeah. I'm not sure either.
Yeah, it belongs together. The lumpers and the splitters, as they say. I think they can have some very interesting conversations about why they belong together or not. Your journey through all these different bison museums that have bison sounds really interesting too.
Yeah, it's all basically county historical societies, but almost everyone has at least a tooth or a skull or a bison coat. Apparently women's bison coats used to be the thing back in the day. I've ran across 3 of those so far. So yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, they are so integral to the history of the West. Are there any other questions in the chat, Madison, or any other questions that you had?
That was the only one in the chat. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to say them or put them in the chat, whichever you're more comfortable with. I kind of wanted to know, I really loved this book and I read this at a really great time because it was when I started working here. And so I knew stuff about bison, but not nearly as much as I needed to. So I thought it was a great plethora of information. So I'm curious, what did you edit out of this book? Or what information did you deem, oh, I'll save that for the next one, or, for a critter chat or something?
Yeah. I think I just had to condense the way I talked about things. I wanted to get every little fact in there. I love details and facts. So yeah, I do. I can't remember now. I know my editor did make me cut some things just because we had too many words, but I resisted all the way as much as I could because I can't think of anything specifically now, but I know that there were things that fell by the wayside. I see Marcus.
Oh, Marcus yes, he has another evolution related question. Marcus, go ahead and ask it. We're ready. Oh, I can read it. It says, a few years ago, I came across a theory in a documentary suggesting that bison may have the ability to regulate blood flow to their horns seasonally, helping to control heat loss or retention in their skulls. It also proposed that this adaptation might have influenced horn size over the course of their evolution. Do you think this idea holds water?
That I had not come across, and it's fascinating. I love to read more about it or hear more about it. But sorry, that's one that somehow I missed along the way.
I'll try and find the YouTube documentary and put it in chat if I can find it fast enough.
Yeah. I want to also just reach a book here that's on my bookshelf and recommend this book. Is that showing up? No. Oh, it's called.
Oh, almost. Hang on. I
Oh.
have a copy as well.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think it's because I've got my background blurred. It's called The Ecological Buffalo by Wes Olson and Johann Janelle. Wes Olson is one of the leading educators, well, bison biologists. He's been involved in bison restoration, and he's very good at communicating about bison. It's a big, thick book that does have some of the things that I couldn't fit into my thin book. And his wife, Johann, her photos are really wonderful, and some of her photos are in my book as well, which was really a real privilege to have them in there. You know, she captured things like that ground squirrel with the mouthful of bison. Yeah.
We have that book for sale in our gift shop and online, I believe, if anyone is interested. It also is a wonderful plethora of information on bison. I'm glad you know that one. That's so cool. Let me see. So you wrote about in this book different people and children, I suppose, all over. Is it the world or just North America?
Just North America. So one of the things that I've wanted to have done with each of my children's books is to profile some kids who are involved with conservation of that species, or with the bison, it was more who are welcoming bison back in different ways. I really want to give young readers inspiration for how they can get involved too and take action, and not just be reading about it and sort of standing off to one side. And so, yeah, the kids I profiled in this book were a family in Saskatchewan who the family has a bison ranch, and so they're growing up helping raise the bison and have very firsthand experience with the bison. A couple who are of Black ancestry, family, come from the Blackfoot family, and they're really connecting with their family history and their tribe's traditions. So that was great to talk to them. A boy from who lives on the edge of Yellowstone Park and has the experience of looking out the window of his house and having bison grazing right in his backyard and coming right up to the window. And it was really fun to hear him talk about just having this kind of nose to nose experience with a bison on the other side of the window. And a girl from Saskatchewan, from the I'm forgetting where she was from. Her school, yes. So from the Nakota Nation, and her school was doing research on bison. So those were the kids who were profiled in the book, and I feel like bringing their stories in kind of adds that human element that can help draw the young readers in.
Definitely relatability. Jim asked, this is more for our side, how often will you be doing things like this? We will be doing Critter Chats once a month from now on, except for December. But the next one is November 22nd, and we will be posting about that one as well. So thank you for asking, Jim. So anybody have any questions? I don't want to steamroll or take over. I love the questions we've gotten so far. They're so interesting about bison and their ancestors and how they evolved. Let me see. Waiting. So I know that you have written books about owls and bears And so what inspired you to write about bison? What got you hooked on them?
Well, I have a thing about keystone species. So my first kid's book is about beavers, who are a quintessential keystone species. And so bison, because they're a keystone species, that was a big inspiration to write about them as well. One of my adult books is about woodpeckers, who are also really interesting keystone species. So, I just think keystone species are play such a fascinating role in ecosystems.
Did you know, I'm sure you learned a lot during your research, but did you know about bison before you started doing your research?
Not as much as the other species that I wrote about. I grew up in Alberta, so I had some familiarity with bison from there, and have seen bison in a number of places. I've traveled. I've been to Yellowstone. I've been to Theodore Roosevelt National Park and camped with the bison that just wander through the campground, which is a very interesting experience. So yeah, I had some familiarity with bison, but I learned a lot along the way, and that for me is one of the fun parts of writing one of these books too, is to delve into all the scientific literature and get to know them on a level that doesn't necessarily go into the book, but as a former biologist, I like digging into the science. I think I saw another question pop up.
Yes. Jim asks, have you been to Custer State Park to view the herd? He and his daughter go every year and it never gets old. Does the park do a good or great job managing the herd, in your opinion?
I have been to Custer State Park, but not when they're doing the roundup, which looks like an amazing event. I'd love to go for that. And I think they're doing a good job of managing the herd from what I know. And, I don't know a lot about it, but I think all of these smaller parks have the challenge of they can't let the herds grow infinitely. They have to keep the herd size appropriate to the amount of land they have, so that the land will be healthy and the bison will be healthy. And so they do it in different ways. But I think one of the things that's really good about what they're doing is they're tracking the genetic lineages and moving bison around to try and get the most genetic diversity in other herds that are being built up or reinforced. And was there another question?
It was about where to find the ecological buffalo, I believe. Where can we find, maybe it was your book too, which is the same. We sell Francis's book in our gift shop, our museum store, and we also sell it online. So feel free to come in and grab a copy. It is wonderful. I had a copy here. I know I did. Aha. So here it is, this wonderful book. I really can't say enough positive things about it. You did a wonderful job. It's just, I'm thrilled. So anyways, you can find that on your website as well, on Francis's website, correct?
Yeah, I don't actually have it for sale on my website,
Okay.
but I have links to like my publisher. But I think for anyone who's in the US, the easiest thing to do would be to buy it through the Bison Center.
Awesome. Okay, any last questions? Thank you guys for all your wonderful questions. This is so fun.
Yeah. Thank you all for coming today and being part of this first Critter Chat and letting me share about my book. Thanks.
Jim says thanks to you all as well. And thank you so much, Francis, for your time and your expertise. I really enjoyed your presentation. This was amazing. I hope everyone joins us next month. We're going to have an expert from the Kanza Prairie in Kansas join us. So Thank you all. Reach out if you have any questions, and thank you, Francis. And we'll see you guys in a month. All right.
Good. Thanks,
Bye.
Madison. Bye, everyone.
Thanks.